let's just give a couple of minutes for some more people to trickle in. I think we can get started. Hey, hello everyone. A very good afternoon. And thank you for joining us today on our lunch and learn session. We use this forum to talk about different questions that our customers have and show some of the demonstrations which we have for you that can help you. And I'm Akshay from Decisions Sales Engineering team. And I'll be your host this afternoon, along with some of my teammates on the call. So we'll start by looking at the questions which we got from some of the people. And I think we received one, and thanks to Maru for collating. Let me read that out. So it's from Erin, and I'm not sure if Erin is on the call yet, but till the time she joins, feel free to ask any questions in the chat, or you can unmute yourself and let us know the question that you have, and we'll try our best to answer it. So I'm not sure if Erin is there on the call. Hey, hi, Erin, are you there? Before I start up with your question. Okay, I guess not. She's not here yet. But what I'll do now is I'll jump onto decisions. Okay, so we just got a question from Chris. How can a flow prompt another flow to run after a 15-minute delay? So that's a good question, Chris. Let me actually jump into Decisions Studio and see. So let me quickly get into one of our flow designers, and I'm going to call it Flow One Lunch and Learn, and hit create. So as you would already be aware that in decisions, we can have subflows within flows. Now that helps us to kind of increase the reusability of the components or the subflow that you might want to use at different places in the project or on the applications. So what you can do is, one of the ways to solve is that you can have a timer here. And we have a step called pause. So what it does is, let's say you have a flow that runs and some steps at this point of the flow. Let me just quickly reenact that thing. Let's say this is your first step in the flow, which is create data, and it does something. And you would want to pause this step before it moves ahead. And what will happen is your subflow, which is the flow you would want to run after certain time, you can use the run subflow step and put the step right after pause subflow. And when you do that, what happens is when the flow comes at this point, it's going to check, hey, I have to wait for some time. And you can define that time here. And you can use the option called compute date, and it'll start at a particular day and time, which can be the current. And we can actually offset. So let's say you want to start and continue with the flow movement. After 15 minutes, you can mention 15 here. And what it does is when your flow runs, it comes to this step, it's actually take a pause of 15 minutes. And only then it goes to this step. So this is one way we can achieve that. Does it help answer your question, Chris?
So the pause flow step, why is it yellow?
Because I have not configured it, maybe, or let's see. So we can see here that if pausing for more than 15 minutes should be enabled. Okay. Save flow data on pause. This has to be enabled. And if I reduce this time to, let's say, 10 minutes, I guess it'll just go off.
Well, I do think that I would take that warning to heart.
Mhm.
Is that setting the save flow data on pause? Is that kind of
It
a new
is,
thing?
yeah. I'm not sure about that because maybe it was existing, but it'll actually help you obtain that requirement that you have. I mean, save flow data on pause. So it'll just save some data somewhere, maybe in the execution or in the metadata. So if you want to collect something, that will be available to you. But as I select that, you would notice that that yellow sign, the warning goes off.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
And
mean, it looks
essentially,
like a
yeah.
step that will do a pause. I'm just sort of
Mhm.
scratching my head and I don't know if this was a decisions release 5 issue. I kind of
Mhm.
recall being uh, getting a note that probably avoid that step, but then that brings up the question of what's my alternative.
Okay.
So my use case is that I would call a service, another external HTTP service,
Mhm.
and for some reason it times out. So the thinking is, well, maybe I wait for 10 or 15 minutes
Yeah.
and try again, because I'll be
Yeah.
running as a this would be a scheduled job that's doing it, so I don't have to. So the idea of having a scheduled job, just sort of take a 10-minute break, doesn't seem like a bad
Mhm.
idea, except I don't know what that does to my schedule.
Yeah. So it won't do anything. I mean, your schedule would run as per the time. The only thing that will change is when your job, which is scheduled to run, comes to this step in the flow, it's just going to take and wait for 15 minutes or 10 minutes. And only then it
Mm-hmm.
will move ahead. Yeah. That's what will happen here.
All right. Looks easy enough then.
Yeah. Definitely give it a try, Chris. And if that doesn't work, you can still let me know or somebody know. We'll help you. But this should work, I'm sure. So I think we have a question from Krushi. Hey, hi Krushi. Please let me know your question.
Hi, Akshay. Yeah. So I'm getting the error while connecting to the postgres server. The error says that the connection has not been established, whereas like it
Okay.
was working fine yesterday.
Okay. So are you connecting to that Postgres connection using this feature that we have here, where we can easily create connections with the external database? Is this how you are using that, Krushi?
We are using connection string, I guess.
Yeah. Okay. So ideally, how it works is, I mean, you would have already done that. You would have given it a name, connection name, and the string here. So it's not something that's happening inside of decisions as of yet, because maybe some value or variable have changed in your string, because the string comes from your end. And what decisions does is when you provide the string here, or if not string, the username and the password that you have or you're using to connect, once you mention that here, and only when you click on test, decision tries to establish that connection. So
Uh,
I would recommend, checking if you're using the connection string and all the variables, all right.
so Akshay, I checked that with our like the IT infra team, like the
Mm-hmm.
person who handles the servers. But he's saying that he hasn't changed the connection string. It's the same as it used to be. And like last time we got the same error saying that the like it was saying that like it has reached maximum limit, something like that. And it's the same error this time.
Okay, and that error comes right on this screen when you click on test or inside the flow.
No, actually, it like when we try to access the database while using the query editor, we
Mhm.
cannot. And yeah, when we go into logs and all, then we see that error that it's been like database has reached the maximum hitting limit.
Okay, yeah, I mean, that can have something to do with the database at your end. So what I'll recommend is, you come to this dialog box where we are actually setting up that string connection, and you try testing it here. Now, if there's something wrong, it might show up here what the error is. Maybe it's something different or why the connection is failing. But if we are able to establish a successful connection from this dialog box, it should really not cause any problem in the flow when we are using it. So maybe
Okay.
give out that try. Yeah.
Okay, Akshay, and my second question would be how can we set, like, how can we move a code to from dev environment to QA environment?
Sorry, say that again once, please.
How can we move a code from dev environment to QA environment?
Okay, so are you using repo server at your end?
Yes.
Because it's like a middleman when we are talking to different environments in decisions. So once you have the repo server set, so it acts like a star model where it becomes the center node, which connects the different environments. So if you want to push your code, the project from dev or QA to prod, so you first send it to repo, you check that in, and then you go to the environment and then you check it out. So
Can
that's
you give
how.
me like, can you explain me with with small example? Actually, I'm done creating the repo, but I'm not sure how to test that in the QA.
I don't have the repo environment set in this instance, but have you connected? What instance are you working on? Are you working on QA and you want to send that QA code to some other environment?
Also, as of now, we have only dev environment set. I'm
Okay.
not sure about the QA. And I
Okay.
also want to know how we can set the QA environment if that's not there.
So for that, you'll have to check with your team what licenses they have, and you can also connect with the support team, and they'll be happy to help you with that. So how it essentially happens is, let's say you have a repo environment and you're currently working on dev. To make that connection, so that to make that sort of transition or the transit of the code from one environment to another, what you do is you come to the environment from where you want to push the code. You come here in the settings and you go to designer repository settings and you click on that. It would ask you for a couple of things. The only thing that would make more sense here is the repo server. So you see that this has an instance, the URL where we are able to access that. Your repo server would also have its own URL. So you provide that here. When you do that and save the setting, what happens is decisions automatically connect with that system. And when you come to your project, let's say this is my project. And when I right click, you would here see one more option to check in project to repo. Right now, you would not see that because we are not connected to repo, but it just adds one or more actions, user actions here that allows you to connect with the repo server. When you do that, it pushes it to the repo server after you commit, and you would be able to see that code in the repo. And once it's in the repo, you can fetch it, or you can check it out in any environment you are connected to, for example, the prod or the other dev. So that's the workflow of connecting and sending a project. Does that help answer your question, Krushi, the repo part?
Yes, Akshay. And like, if I want the help from the decision support team,
Yeah.
like how long will it take them to respond?
Yeah, so it depends on the criticality. So when you'll be raising that form, you will get to choose how critical this is and what's the timeline you are looking to close this ticket. And correspondingly, you'll be getting to hear from them. And we also have a critical ticket system also, where we usually try to close things in 24 hours if it's really critical. So I would suggest you write to support team and maybe get that answered further.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, no worries. So I had a question from Erin, and I'm not sure if Erin is on the call, but it was a good question. I can take that up next, which can benefit other people on the call also. But if you guys have some question that is more specific to you, please feel free to unmute or use the chat option. So in the meantime, I'll talk about the reporting in decisions and how we can report data in a metrics report. So what we do is, so I have a question from Alex wondering how a repository works with languages. Alex, can you provide some more context to this? When you say languages, is it like the Java and the other languages that you're working on?
Yeah, so I've implemented, a secondary language translation, for French, and
Okay.
I'm just kind of wondering how this whole thing works, because if I actually go into system data, languages, and I click on my language, and then I right click, I actually don't get any repository actions. Whereas if I actually go into a particular string that's being translated, I do have the repository actions. So, I'm trying to figure out how this all works.
When you say check, see repository action, are you looking at repository action on this folder or the language translation which you have created?
Well, so okay, again, so I mean, my path is system data,
That's where I am.
languages,
Yep.
and then I'm clicking on the actual language, in this case French. And if I right click on it, I get to I don't have a repository action here. It says like I can import or export this.
Oh, okay.
But if I actually go into and I click on one of the strings that is available for translation, then I get a designer repository option.
Okay. So yeah. So I'm not very sure about how repository works with the languages, because we usually use repository. I mean, I have used repository to transmit my projects in the code from one environment to another. But when you come and right click, do you see this option of import export?
Yeah, so on the at the level of the language in the navigation tree, I get import export. Yeah, so if I click export, then it seems like folder fr-ca is part of the project fr-ca and can be exported by selecting the options below and pressing continue. So I would download project. Is that what I would do?
So I mean, this is one way that I can see. You can click on export, and what it does is it'll help you connect or map this particular language which you have defined with the project that you have. So what I would do is I would right click on the language, click on import export, and then export. And what I'll do is I will actually map it to the project which you have. Now, once it is mapped to the project, and then when you check out that project, so I believe this becomes as one of the dependency for the project, and it should actually travel along with the other files in the folder.
Yeah, so the problem is that like I have 20 projects.
Okay.
And they all use the translation services of French. So basically what I'm looking for is the ability to move my language translations from one server to another without actually having to go in and redo the translations on each server, kind of thing. So that's the functionality I'm looking for. So like, can I export this language and then import it onto another server and I get everything?
Yeah, I think that should work, is what I feel, because that's what this option helps us to kind of export that. Now, if you don't want to link it to a particular project, what can be done is you create an entire project which has this dependency of language. When you mention the name here and continue, this language will be mapped to a project which can be just like a global language or French language, and then you can import that folder in wherever you would want to use that. I mean, that's something I would definitely try if I were you. Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you.
And Alex, if that also doesn't solve, then definitely maybe there's a ticket to support. If there's something that they can help with, they will definitely reach out to you.
Okay, great. Appreciate that.
Yeah, no worries. Okay, so let's move back into reporting, and where we can talk about how reports work in decisions and what are the different kind of views that we get in decisions. So I go and come to my working folder where I'm kind of building things. And I'm going to click on create a report. And I'm going to call it, let's say, report to lunch and learn, and hit create. So when I do that, it takes us to the report designer and decisions. And we can click on add sources to kind of create the report of the data structure or the database that we have in the system. So in this case, I would want to report some things about the data structure that I have, and it's called loan applications. And I can click on add to see what are the different fields that I have that I can use to populate this particular report. So I'm going to start by using the user ID, the employment type, the salary, and the requested loan amount, or maybe loan rank, date of birth, and let's say age as well. So with that, I have all the things that I need in my report. And from this master report, I can create as many reports as I want, which are basically the different views. So when I click on add here, it gives me different options. And I would show you how we can create metrics out of this report on some of the fields that we would want to see. But before that, I want to point out that we can further cleanse this report. For example, we don't need all these zeros in salary. So I can click on this data type at the data field. And in the settings, I can come down and click on format and change it to currency. So it'll just clean itself up, and I'll do the same thing for requested loan amount. So depending on what kind of data we are working on, we can change that. For example, I just gave percentage, but I would want to have a currency. So we can make those changes here. And when you further use this report in the dashboard, it's going to have just the same format as you're setting here. And we also get a lot of different options for date of birth. So the thumb rule of working with the reports is you select any of the fields which you have, and on the right-hand side property panel, you can do a lot more things. You can hide them, you can sort them, you can group them, and you can align them. And what I'm doing here is I can also change the format. So in this, I'm going to pick something called short date. So it's nice and clean. And I'm going to save it. So this is a default view of the report. But let's say I would want to see this report maybe in some sort of a matrix. So what I do here is I come here, click on add, and click on matrix. So decisions will help me build that view that I would want to have for the final user to see. And this matrix basically will just be having the same data which we have, but in the matrix format. So we get this add dimension in the row, and we get add dimension in the column. So let's say I want to report on the field, and I can actually pick which field do I want to have here. And I'm going to say employment, so that I can see, okay, how many applications were sent by the employed users and how many were sent by the unemployed users. And I can have this nice little intersection here, which tells me the value. So I can hit save here. At the end, I can also have this column total. So what I'll do is it will tell me what's the final count of that row. And similarly, I can configure the dimension in the column. So I click on that, and again, I can select what is the field that I want to report on this matrix. So in this case, I'm going to keep something called loan rank. So the idea here is to kind of understand, okay, how many users were there who were employed and it was their first loan, and how many users were there who were applying in the second loan and they were unemployed. So this sort of a metrics can be defined in this report. So I'm going to just go ahead and click save. Now what's happening here is it's just giving us a count. But the question that Erin had was she wanted to also see, can we also get the sum for a particular combination of row and column. So that can definitely be done in decisions. And to do that, what you do is you click on add dimension. And when we click on add dimension, it further asks us, what is the field that we would want to report here? So in this case, the interest would be to kind of get the requested loan amount sum. So I select that field and I come here and look for the sorting. Or actually, let's get rid of this and have dimension. We will actually be doing the calculation because we want to add a sum here. Sum of all the loans that we have got. And that's what's happening here. And I can choose the format again as currency here, and I can click save. So what's happening here is now it's actually showing me the sum of the requested loan amount for the category of first loan, second loan, and further the employed and unemployed. Now, when I do that, you would notice that the count disappeared. I mean, I see that here, but I'm not seeing it here. So if I want to have that count here, what I do is I add one more calculation. And this time I can use something called count. And I use here count. I mean, the field would not matter because field would just be representing the count of different rows I have. So I can pick any of them. So let me take age here and use the title as count and click save. So what happened here is we are able to see two different cells for a particular combination of employed first loan. This is the sum, and these are the number of applications that we have got. For the employed second loan, this is the sum of the requested loan amount, and this is the count. So just like this, we can manipulate the reports and decisions. And when you would be reporting that on the dashboard, it's going to respect the data that's coming from the main report, which is this, but it'll be shown in this metrics format. And as and when this loan application gets more entries, more records, so this all will be dynamic, and it will change the sum and also the count as and when we get more values in this database structure. So that was one of the questions that Erin had, and it was a nice one because a lot of times we do not explore what are the different options that metrics view can give us, because by default, it just gave us the count. But we can keep in mind that not just count, we can also have sums and other calculations also here. For example, I want to report something, average, minimum, medium, all those calculations can be done here. So let me delete this and save this. So that was the other question that we received. So let me check the chat box if we have any more questions. Okay, so I don't see any further questions in the chat, and I see there are some attendees here still. So let me know if you have anything that you would want us to talk about in the rest of the time.
Hey, actually, Carlos, so I love what you've done here with the matrix rule. Is there a way that you could go over rule sets and how they're commonly used, or maybe a use case that you found?
Yeah, sure, sure, Carlos. We can definitely talk about rule sets. So rule sets, as you know, it's kind of a rule in decisions that helps us put multiple rules in one entity so that all of those rules work together in that particular rule set. And that becomes a very important feature of decisions when we are working with a rule engine that requires a lot of rules. So let me actually dive into one of the rule sets that I have here, and I will talk about that as we see it. So I come to this folder. It has 3 different rule sets. So I'm going to talk about the instance. So when I get inside a rule set, and when I'm creating a rule set, So this is the kind of designer that I get. This is the rule sets designer. Couple of things to note here. One is this initial setup. So rule sets have ability to behave in certain ways. One is, we can have a logical evaluations happening in a rule set. And what that means is all the rules will actually be giving you a Boolean as the output, nothing else. And this sort of rule set is used when you have a use case when the system needs to stop at a particular false or at a particular true that's coming in a sequence. Or it can be, let's say, I would pass a person if I get 4 true out of 5 total conditions. So we can take those sort of use cases in this rule set. Okay, I got a question from Erin. Let me jump back. Is it possible to sum and report? Okay. Hey, Erin. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. You can please take that up later. I don't want to interrupt your topic.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, no worries. I was just, talking about that and I just jumped onto this, but let me switch back to that real quick. So I was just talking about the rule sets and I was just explaining the first one, which is logical, and it's used when we want to return a Boolean as part of the rule set. And then we have something called data return. Now, what data return is, it helps us to define what kind of data do I want to return from the rule set. So we use that when I have some string or some sort of a user-defined data type that I've defined will give me the output. And then we have something called scoring. So this is a very classic example, and it's very easy to explain and understand also. For example, we go to the bank, we apply for a loan. So they take a lot of inputs from us, our salary, our age, how many years we've been working, and all those stuff. And all of those attributes have a particular score associated with those variables. And that's exactly what scoring can do when we are using this. And when we use that, every rule in this rule set, there can be 10 rules, 100 rules, which can be statement rules, the truth tables, and each of those rules will actually be giving me a score. And at the end, I can sum up all the scores depending on the attributes that I got as the input and use that score to take further decision. Let's say if the score is 0.8, then I would multiply 0.8 with the actual ask of the loan amount. If it's 100, I would multiply that with my scoring, which is 0.8, and I'll actually give them only 80 because that's what they're eligible for. So that's where scoring rule set helps a lot. And there are some other settings here that you can configure, the rule types. So as and when you select these different rules will be available to you on this panel here. So you can create those. So that's about the setup of the rule set. And what we have here is an already built rule set, which has these rules that you see. We are checking the age, we are checking some skin conditions if the user had, and we're also checking the consent from the participant. And when I click on each of these, you would actually see what's happening. So this one is a Boolean type rule set. So it doesn't have any other output but a Boolean true and a false. And that will be happening with each of these rules here, true and a false. So had I set it as scoring or data return, it would actually give me an option here where I can provide the output. So this is the benefit of kind of defining the rule sets. It governs the kind of output that I'll be getting from the rules. And when we run that, it actually checks all the rules and give me the output. So that was a quick one about the rule set. Any question, Carlos, before I jump into Erin's question again?
No, but thank you very much. That was a great explanation, and I'm looking forward to picking your brain in the future.
Perfect. Anytime. So there are other kinds of rule sets also, but they can be a little complicated, but it depends on what we are trying to solve. When we know the problem and then we see, okay, this is the rule set, then it becomes very easy to connect what type do I want to use. Okay, so now let me switch back into Erin's question that we have. So Erin, that's what we were just doing. We were creating a dummy report. And this was a report that we had, and we thought of creating a metrics out of that.
Right.
And I think the main question that you had was, can we have a sum along with the count in the metrics intersection? Is that correct, Erin?
That's correct.
Okay, perfect. So what we did was we created add here and we selected metrics. So since we've already built it, let me jump right into that. So that's how the final matrix look like. And let me actually delete that so that it becomes more understandable. Okay. So what I did is I just picked this, or let me actually go one step further back and start from scratch. Okay, so this is the first thing that you see when you click on matrix. And here you can actually define the matrix for you, depending on what data you're trying to have. So on the row, we can add dimension. I would pick the field because that's what I want to represent here that has one of these data fields that I have. So I click on that and I would want to see the 2x2 matrix of employment versus the loan rank. So I'm going to pick the employment and save. And on the left hand side, I'm going to see the loan rank. So what's happening here is, Erin, so on the row, I can see, okay, how many people were employed who were requesting for their first loan, how many people were unemployed who were requesting for their second loan, and some sort of a 2x2 matrix. And we can take the totals. This will actually just give us the count. So I think this is what you are trying to solve, Erin, right? I mean, we are just seeing the counts and not the sum of what's the sum of loan in each case. Is that right?
Yes, that's exactly where I'm at right now.
Perfect. Thanks for confirming. So what we can do is we can click on add dimension. So the top ones may become like your headers, and each of these dimensions can become your subheader. So what I'm going to do here is I know the count, but I would also want to see the sum of all the loans which are by employed people, and that's their first loan. So what I'm going to do is I'm click on add dimension, and I'm going to use this feature called add calculation dimension. So what will help me do is it'll actually help me to calculate, which can be a sum, a count, or an average of some particular value. So in this case, I'm going to select requested loan amount, and I will be actually doing the sum of that. And I can select the format. In this case, it'll be currency, and I can click save. So what you see is we have a subcategory, and here it is loan amount, and it's actually the sum. Now, let's see, currency, okay.
I was still
Now-
preserving the decimal places on there.
Yeah, I think I need to refresh it to something
If you just,
because I was
just
doing the same report.
Sure, just pop it back open.
Yeah.
There you go. Yep, and change that drop down.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, it should be good. I actually gave the decimals. So, okay. So now what's happening here is, I mean, you can see the total, and on the right-hand side, you can see the count. But let's say if you want to still see the count under each, you can add one more calculation, and this time it will be count, and the title can be count, and I can hit save. So what's happening is your cell gets divided into two cells, but it's essentially giving you X versus Y result. Now, if you feel that this header is confusing to you and you don't want to see that, you can come here, click edit, and hide the header. And similarly for the account. So what it does is it gives you exactly what you're asking. And it gives you the sum and also the count. And at the end, it gives you total of each row and the column along with the count.
That looks great. I do have one question. In the bottom total summation, I have the currency and I have the count. Is it possible to add the currency to the y-axis as well, total? Or is that not?
So this total is actually for the count. If you see 3 + 1, 4. So, and this is something which is totally optional. You can just get rid of that also.
Okay, but I can't include the currency in the columns total.
It will come, because what's happening here is I'm taking, I mean, because this, if you look here, it's the sum of the values in the row, and the row is defined by the loan. I mean, the number of loans, the count here. So that's why. But here, if you see, you can see there's a dollar here. Now, if you want that to happen, what we can do is we can create one more dimension here. Let's create this, and this will be requested loan amount, and we'll take sum, and we will use currency. So now it changes a little bit. Now you can see this, but what it did, it is also took the count and added the currency here as well. So
Okay, so there might still be a way.
Yeah, definitely,
do
because
it.
there are different options here, right? You can use them and kind of create the right metrics that you would want to
Okay,
solve. Yeah.
great. This is fantastic. Thank you. I think I'm ready to work this out on my own now.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, you can try a lot of things here in metrics. It's you know, and possibilities are endless. Okay. All righty.
All right, sounds good.
Any more questions from anyone on the call? So in this Lunch and Learn session, we talked about how to report into matrix and how we can manipulate that matrix when we want to represent some data in the format we want. And we also see how we can change the the formatting of different data types and the data fields that I have in report to make it look more clean and more controlled for the end user. And we also looked at connecting with the external databases, how strings connection can be established and tested. And we also talked about the rule sets. So I think it was a good session, and you can take still one more minute if we have anything from anyone before we close today's session. And if not, then I would like to thank you all for joining us today and being a wonderful audience and participants.
Thank you so much, Akshay.
Yeah, no worries.
Yeah, thank you, Akshay. That was awesome.
Yeah, no worries. Over to you, Maru. I'll stop sharing my screen.